Welcome to the Deerwood Realty Show. I'm John Shank, founder and managing broker of Deerwood Realty in St. Louis, Missouri. Mortgage fraud. We've been talking about it for a while. Kind of hard to put your finger on like exactly what is mortgage fraud and like what is not mortgage fraud. I have an interesting story, and we're just going to kind of go through the progression today of like how I saw it and what I think now. And you may know about it. I don't know anything about this particular case. I haven't seen anything until I saw it just recently. So you might be better informed than I am. But I did want to get to it. So let's check it out. So here we go. I saw this on Twitter, and it said ex-Baltimore prosecutor Marilyn Mosby avoids prison time for perjury and mortgage fraud convictions. Now, I don't know who Marilyn Mosby is. I know nothing about this, right? But I kind of wanted to see, like, what are we talking about when it comes to fraud? Like, what are we doing here? As a real estate agent, mortgage fraud, lenders, things of this nature, I do care because I don't really want to be involved in this type of thing. So it says a federal judge has sentenced Baltimore's former top prosecutor to time served and 12 months of home confinement to be served concurrently with 3 years of supervised release for mortgage fraud and perjury. Well, I guess it would seem that mortgage fraud is pretty severe. Okay, but we got to make sure we understand this. So time served and 12 months of home confinement to be served concurrently with 3 years of supervised release. Okay. And so then it says, in addition, she was ordered to complete 100 hours of community service. Whatever. And so then it turns out that she was involved in this thing in this Freddie Gray case in 2015. It's 2024. My, how time flies. It says U.S. prosecutors had asked the court to sentence Mosby 44 to 20 months in prison, followed by a supervised release according to the May 9th sentencing memorandum. That sentence, the memo said, would make clear that those who break the law, including those in positions of public trust, will be held accountable. If you believe that, if you believe the FBI is, really, really looking out for this, I have a bridge to sell you. It says Mosby has claimed she is innocent and the charges against her are politically motivated. And we'll go over that, at least what I can find. It says her attorney argued in a May 16th response that she has been punished enough, asking for a sentence of time served with 1 year of supervised release. So she didn't exactly get that. I'm just looking along here. It says that two juries found that Mosby did something wrong and breached a public trust. And we'll get to that. But it says, in addition to Thursday's sentence, Grisby, which is the judge, ordered Mosby to forfeit 90% of her interest in the Longboat Key, Florida condo connected to her conviction on making a false mortgage application. Okay, so there's the fraud. And it's interesting when she's to forfeit 90% of her interest, so she's still going to have 10? A preliminary order filed Thursday authorized the government to seize the property. Once sold, Mosby could receive up to $47,600 plus 10% of the home's appreciation value. Now, what's interesting to me is prices have gone up like 50% in some places throughout the country in the last 2 years. I mean, just massive price increases. It's quite possible that my question would be is she entitled to more than $47,000? I mean, where did they come up with this number? It says Mosby walked out of court with her two daughters alongside a group of supporters, including civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who chanted "Justice for Marilyn." I don't exactly know what that means. Does that mean that she's receiving justice by being sentenced to the crime that she's been convicted of, or does that mean something else? Anyway, it says Mosby was first found guilty in November of 2 counts of perjury after prosecutors accused her of falsely claiming in 2020 she experienced adverse financial consequences as a result of the flu pandemic to withdraw $90,000 in retirement funds. At the time, she earned a gross salary of $247,000. The indictment said her pay was never reduced. So that is the perjury charge. That perjury charge is not related to the mortgage fraud or the mortgage application, I don't think. So then it says Mosby was then found guilty in February of making a false mortgage application stemming from the purchase of a Florida condo. The Justice Department says, it says, at trial, prosecutors presented evidence showing Mosby falsely stated she had gotten a $5,000 gift from her husband to be applied to the purchase of the property to get a lower interest rate. In fact, the Justice Department said Mosby sent her husband $5,000, which he then transferred back to her. A jury in that trial acquitted Mosby of second charge of making a false mortgage application stemming from the purchase of another Florida home. So what it looks like, just off the top of my head, and I could be wrong, it looks like the woman got money, PPE money, and then she went and bought 2 homes in Florida. And in the process of buying those homes, and at least one of them, when they asked for you to show your income on your mortgage application, she said she was getting a gift, and apparently it wasn't a gift of $5,000. Now, look, this woman is what was she? What was her title? She was the prosecutor. It says Baltimore's former top prosecutor. So she was the top prosecutor for Baltimore, and the government found she committed mortgage fraud on a $5,000 payment, which to me seems like picking at someone. I know it's not like me to be on the side of the defendant, but seriously, you're gonna put this person in jail for that? And I mean, the money existed. It wasn't like fake money. It's just a question of how the gift was structured, right? I mean, that's the way it looks like to me. So I looked over here at the U.S. Attorney General's website. I thought that would help, right, for the District of Maryland. And it went through it and said, the jury's decision holds Ms. Mosby accountable for disregarding the laws she swore to uphold. The FBI works diligently to ensure that anyone who engages in fraud and corruption will be held accountable for their bad acts. Now, look, there are politicians walking around right now that have committed fraud and corruption, and they're not even close to being held accountable for their bad acts. So that's a lie. The FBI doesn't work diligently to ensure that at all. Not even close. But let's continue. It says, according to the evidence presented at trial, in February 2021, Mosby made a false statement in an application for a $428,400 mortgage to purchase a condominium in Longboat Key, Florida. So when we were talking about like she was going to get $47,000 back, how is that possible when it was a 420? Are we saying that it didn't go up in value since then? As part of the application, Mosby falsely stated that she had received a $5,000 gift from her husband to be applied to the purchase of the property. According to the evidence presented at trial, Mosby made this statement in order to secure a lower interest rate. Now, we've talked about this. Your primary residence gets a lower rate than a secondary residence, okay? So that's not up for debate. What is up for debate is, how do you know if it's going to be your primary residence? How do you know what your intention is? Do you intend to sell your other primary property, which would make the secondary property your primary one? It's very gray area to me. And they snagged her on this one, and it's like, it says, according to the evidence presented at trial, Mosby did not receive the $5,000 gift from her husband, but rather transferred $5,000 to him, and then he transferred the $5,000 back to her. And I've talked about this. You have to document your gifts. This isn't a surprise if you are in real estate and you help with getting your clients approved for a mortgage. I say help, I mean like saying, here's the mortgage guy or here's the mortgage gal. Listen to what they say and do what they say, and it should work out. I've worked with these people in the past. They seem to be on the up and up. Let's continue, though. This was interesting. This was a while back. This was January 22nd, 2024. It says, the government says this person lied repeatedly to influence lenders in purchase of Florida vacation homes. And then the defense was Mosby trusted her realtor and mortgage broker followed their instructions. Now, to me, I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. I mean, I don't like to be on this side, right? I want to be on the side where burn her at the stake for committing crimes. But what are we doing here? A $5,000 gift that, I don't know. It just, to me, it seems like they were picking on this woman. It says the government told the jury that Mosby lied on mortgage applications to purchase 2 Florida vacation homes, an 8-bedroom, 6-bathroom home near Orlando in September 2020, followed by a 1,500 square foot condo in Longboat Key on the Gulf of Mexico in February of 2021. Now look, I mean, an 8-bedroom, 6-bathroom home is probably not cheap, right? I mean, we're not talking about a little bit of money here. It says the government said Mosby knew what she submitted was not true, but she did it anyway 7 times on 2 sets of loan paperwork, in part to hide tax debt and get a lower interest rate. Mosby has pleaded not guilty. So now the element of taxes is here with us. It says the defendant lied repeatedly to influence lenders. She wanted to give her money. She wanted to give her money for the Florida vacation homes. So she wanted to influence lenders. Okay, it says it wasn't the money she didn't have. It was the money she already owed. She's not on trial for owing taxes, but she is for lying about it. All right, so then it says Mosby's team teed up a not my job defense, saying her then husband did the taxes and she didn't know there was debt. I didn't know it was a crime defense. Says the defense also says Mosby trusted her realtor and mortgage broker following their instructions. They acknowledged that she had a big job and powerful position as a former Baltimore City state attorney, but that she's not an expert at everything. And I think that if we just took a moment to step back and realize, I mean, obviously, no one's an expert at everything, right? So when you hear your congressional leaders talk about all these things that they know nothing about, it's frightening. When you hear the Department of Justice talking about things they know nothing about, it's frightening. When you hear judges talking about things they know nothing about, it's frightening. But they get away with it. It's okay. I think that it would be totally reasonable to follow your mortgage broker and realtor's instructions. And my question would be, if this is so bad, what happened, right? Are the realtor and mortgage broker being sued? Are they being charged? Why not? Why or why not? So then it says, during several hours of document-heavy direct testimony and cross-examination, the IRS official went through Mosby's tax debt, explaining how it began with the filing year 2014, topped out at around $70,000, triggering a tax lien. It included numerous notices mailed to Mosby's home in the span of more than 5 years. So she kept getting notices at her home. Now, she had 3 homes, so we don't know where they were sending them. I mean, maybe they were sending them to the Florida address, and she wasn't there. She was at her primary residence. It says the government's second witness Monday was the head of a Florida property management firm that Mosby contracted with to rent out the Kissimmee home. 1 week before closing on the property, the government said Mosby told lenders the property would be her family's second home and not a vacation rental. I don't know what to make of this. It seems like they singled her out. Well, as usual, I have some questions. I just kind of want to go over it a little bit deeper. It says, some of the questions I came up with: what ethical dilemmas arise when trusted public officials commit mortgage fraud? Do people still trust government officials or public officials? Any of them? It says, how does mortgage fraud impact overall trust in the real estate and banking industries? Do people actually still trust real estate and banking industries? Should penalties for mortgage fraud be harsher for public officials? Why not? It says, I wrote this down. It says, it sure looks like they came after this person, at least on the mortgage fraud side, with some very weak charges, almost like they singled her out. Also, their statements seemed to indicate that they were sending a message, so I think they were probably harsher on her. I think if mom and pop lender or mom and pop apartment owner or mom and pop single family property owner that happened to own 60 properties in the middle of the hood committed mortgage fraud, I don't see the government coming after them. And when I say the hood, I don't care if it's the hood or the suburbs. wherever somebody wants to operate, you're just, those people are not getting put in jail for this. They're not even being sentenced. They're not even being there's nothing. They're not being tried, not being investigated, nothing. It says, how can the industry ensure that ethical practices are upheld in mortgage lending? Let's go over the question again. How can the industry ensure that ethical practices are upheld in mortgage lending? Okay? And what I would say to that is, I've never understood why ethics is a cover for the avoidance of criminality. People commit crimes. No amount of ethical practices are going to fix that. And you can watch that in the National Association of Realtors and that garbage with their ethics, okay? I have to take an ethics course every 2 years, okay? The National Association of Realtors head, the president, resigned due to blackmail, okay? This is not very ethical, okay? Nothing about that was ethical. So I don't want to hear about how I get lectured about being ethical. It's not a cover for a crime. If you're a realtor and you're a criminal, you are a criminal. It doesn't matter what your ethics are. Okay? Teaching criminals ethics doesn't keep them from being a criminal. And that's the most bizarre thing I've seen in society in my lifetime. It's like, just because you teach somebody something doesn't mean it's true. You teach ethics all the time. Whose ethics? Whose ethics? What are the societal consequences of widespread mortgage fraud? And this is also an interesting question. Just how many vacation homes have been purchased in Florida and elsewhere with elements of mortgage fraud? What happens if these properties were to go into default? Would the person who committed the fraud in the first place act in a lawful manner to dispose of the property before it was foreclosed on? After that, are we to assume that the foreclosure process is ethical and doesn't cause negative societal consequences? I mean, the foreclosure process to me across the United States is somewhat slimy. Okay, it just is. I'm not proud of it. To me it seems slimy. And you say, well, John, what about it makes it what seems slimy to you? Well, if you got the right of redemption, which is great, but most of the time you're not. If you couldn't pay the house payment, you probably aren't going to be able to redeem your property because you probably don't have the money. And then you have the due on sale clause, okay? And you have the mortgage acceleration clause in the mortgage itself, which means they can ask for all the payments at once. Then the house, it goes on the courthouse steps sometimes, but doesn't other times, depending on where you live. The people that are buying the stuff at the courthouse steps, are they ethical folks? Sometimes it somehow gets into these, like when Zillow was losing all their properties when they were doing iBuying and just losing their ass, they sold that whole bank of properties to someone, right? And you say, well, that's not unethical because they weren't being in foreclosure. Well, those properties, were they owned outright? And there's huge bundles of mortgages being sold somehow that are underwater. Not foreclosures. Anyway. How does the pursuit of home ownership influence individuals to engage in fraudulent activities? So for my entire lifetime, it's been said that owning a home is the American dream. It's kind of odd to me, though. Most people are buying a decaying box with a fixed payment attached to it, yet here we are. You're literally buying a payment. I mean, I'm a real estate agent. I see houses all the time. There's not one that doesn't need money. There's not one. It needs new paint. It needs new roof. The basement needs to be remodeled. The bathroom needs to be remodeled. The kitchen sink leaks. It's just a constant expense. And you get a mortgage. Yeah. What role does financial literacy play in preventing mortgage fraud? We don't know if the people who were convicted of perjury and fraud in this case would have been helped in any way by financial literacy. Maybe they had tremendous financial literacy and they used that to commit the mortgage fraud in the first place. I think it's a dumb question. How can the legal system better detect and deter mortgage fraud without stifling legitimate lending practices? I believe that the lenders audit themselves at least. Buyers I have worked with sign documents at closing that typically say that they give permission to the lenders to look at their files to check for instances of fraud. Okay, so they have whole departments designed to just look through files and see if everything is on the up and up. They actually, what you sign is they're allowed to take your tax return and look at it to make sure that the income matches what you were approved for on the mortgage. But then second to that, isn't it a question of resources? I mean, if the legal system wanted to find mortgage fraud, I feel like it'd be a pretty easy thing to do. Rather, I think they concentrate on filing high-profile cases in order to deter or try to deter others from committing egregious acts of mortgage fraud. I mean, think about it. In this case, they went after Baltimore's, at the time, top prosecutor, okay? And they nicked her on they got her, they convicted her on a payment of $5,000 that was real. It wasn't like they were wiring fake money or anything like that. They were flipping money back and forth, okay, from the husband to the wife, and it makes you kind of wonder, like, you didn't know? But I mean, the number was so small. This person had a position of authority, and it seems like they did this to make a model out of someone. It says, what are the long-term impacts of mortgage fraud on communities and housing markets? And so I'm a little bit fascinated by that. So to me, it raises the sales price of homes. So the more fraud you have, the higher the house prices are. So but in that case, it's a good thing, bad thing, depending on what position you're in. If you're a seller, you want the most you can get for your property. If you're a buyer, you want something you can afford. Those are two different positions, and I'm not sure we've really devoted a lot of thought or effort into the path forward, which is why we're in the situation we are in today across the country with massive housing unaffordability. I mean, we've basically financialized your home. You know, we've taken it and we've turned it into this big giant investment. Okay, and so we can't just live in the homes anymore. They have to make money, and it's a disaster. It's just a disaster. Now, I told you guys maybe last week about one of my neighbors. There's a house that got flipped in the neighborhood, and it was like $60,000 or $70,000 sold for more than what any of the other houses sold for in the neighborhood. And he was excited. He was happy. He was like, great, my property values went up. I'm really happy. And I was on the other end. I was like, your taxes are going to go up. He didn't care about the taxes. He didn't care at all. I do. I hate paying taxes. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's theft. Taxation is theft. Anyway, with that, I'm going to head on out. What do you think? Do you think this lady got singled out for mortgage fraud? I do. I mean, did she commit a crime? Well, she was convicted in court on one. But my gosh, to come at her for the $5,000, where's the money? Proof of a gift is sketchy. To devote the entire FBI after this woman, the resources of the federal government coming down on you for this. Anyway, with that, I'm going to head out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Hey, I'm on X now. I'm putting the episodes on X. Watch over there. I think XTV is coming out, which sounds dirty. We're on YouTube. It'd be great if you subscribe there. I don't know where else we'll be. We'll be on Locals. We're on Rumble. I mean, there's places you can find me if you're looking. Follow me on Twitter if you want to, dig deeper into my thoughts about everything. Deerwood Realty on Twitter. With that, goodbye. Have a good weekend. Thank you.